All right. First of all, I'd like to thank the Demos and the Ionian School for having me at the conference to talk. Mostly, I want to talk about arranging. That's what I do for a living. Actually, I'm a school teacher, but before I did that, primarily I made my living arranging in New York City. I want to speak mostly in conceptual terms because I really want to play more musical examples than I want to talk. In terms of jazz, I've been interested in extended forms in jazz ever since I heard sketches in Spain. So, I've always been very interested in orchestral jazz. My background is that of an improviser. I started out playing in rhythm and blues bands when I was very young. I learned how to play jazz by playing in clubs. When I was growing up, nobody, particularly in my area, went to school to be a jazz musician. You went to school to learn how to play music, but you didn't go to school with the intention of having a career in jazz. Anyway, that's my background. And in the meantime, along the way, I ended up in school studying with some really incredible arrangers and composers. The first being Hank Levy at Towson University, who was instrumental in experimenting with odd time signatures in jazz, and this is in 1969. So it's not really a new thing. It's been going on for 40 years. And studied with Bob Brookmeyer. I got to study with Ray Wright. Anyway, I had the luck of studying with some really good people along the way. But anyway, just to talk about a little bit about arranging, I want to stick to my script here so I can play more music. The improvisational nature of the art form makes it a very inclusive one. Basically, jazz is such that you can include any music, any sound, noise, whatever you want, mistakes, anything that you want to include can be included in the art form. The simplistic view of jazz, particularly in the beginning, is that it's primarily rhythmic from African music, West African music, and primarily the harmony comes from Western Europe. And, simplistically, this is true. The one thing, the European elements we're all familiar with because that's what we study when we go to school. It's the African elements that are a little foreign to us, particularly the rhythmic element. One of the main things about African music is that it doesn't have bar lines and it doesn't have form. Usually it's completely spontaneous, and even though occasionally you'll hear an African piece of music with an ostinato bass line, which will give the appearance that the intention is that of bar lines, but it's not really. What it is, what's the unifying element in African music is basically a metronomic pulse, which is one of the things that we find so attractive in jazz, is that constant metronomic pulse. In African music, over this, an infinite number of polyrhythmic relationships can be formed. One of the reasons why Africans in New Orleans were so attracted to march rhythm. Anyway, anything that I play for you, and anything that I say, if you'd like to talk to me, I'm going to be around. If you want to hear some music, look at the score. I'd be happy to email you the score. I can send you entire things, but talk to me. I'll give you my email address, and we can talk about it. But I just want to make reference to a couple things that I've written. I'm only going to play the first one in entirety, the others as we have time for. This first thing is a piano concerto that I was commissioned to write in 2005. It was originally composed to be performed by a Finnish pianist by the name of Jarmo Savolainen, who is no longer with us. He passed away before he had an opportunity to play this. But I have to acknowledge it because it came about through a lot of conversations I had with Jarmo. The original performance was done by a Danish pianist by the name of Mads Berendsen in Aarhus, Denmark, and a really fine jazz pianist, and subsequently to that, a pianist on the faculty of my university a man by the name of Eugene Albulescu, who's a Romanian pianist. He's the 1996 Liszt competition winner. Just an amazing, amazing classical pianist. And I think this whole thing actually started to come about before I talked to Jarmo. Eugene and I used to get together and just improvise together every Thursday afternoon. We recorded this. I didn't bring any of it because most of it's totally unlistenable. We had no common language to work with. So, you know, there are some moments, but really not anything that you'd want to sit down and spend time with. Anyway, this first piece of music is a politically motivated piece entitled Cowboy Jazz. It's a memorial piece to the events of September 11, 2001 in New York City, and my own political views, which I'm not going to bother you with right now. However, instead of using African polyrhythm, it makes use of Eastern European added rhythm, specifically alternating bars of 9 and 11. So all the way through this piece, it's a bar of 9/8, a bar of 11/8, a bar of 9/4, bar whatever the common time unit is. So I'm going to play a rehearsal of this piece, and as is my custom, much to the dismay of the people who work for me, I never give anybody enough time to prepare anything for several reasons. Budgetary, number one, and second of all, I really like to hear what's going to happen when people who can improvise are confronted with a near impossible musical situation. I have always been very attracted to music that started in a very organized fashion and sort of ended in, went into a very chaotic state and then returned to an orderly place. So anyway, this first thing is the fourth movement of the piano concerto. This is the Romanian pianist by the name of Eugene Albulescu. This is with a 9-piece group of studio musicians out of New York City. There's an ensemble pianist, and it's track number 4 on that. So maybe I'll talk over this if I think of anything to say. But this is a little bit sort of a free association of all the previous movements. One of the interesting things in this, to me anyway, is that it culminates with a piano solo over a meringue, a Mozambique salsa pattern, but stretched over a bar of 9 and a bar of 11, which is pretty interesting. It goes into a paso doble and 11. Thank you. Musicians a break here. This is the first time they've seen this, except for the pianist. He had the music pad. the Mozambique. Built over 9/8 and 11/8. 2232, 3323 is the London. 333 and then 22223. Instead of 11/9/8 and 11/8, a lot of these guys are just playing in 10/4. So, you know, all this stuff is going on underneath of them, but they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's supposed. So that's actually the way they're improvising on it. All right, that was all written. The instructions given to the musicians were that anything that they couldn't actually play because it was technically very difficult, they were just supposed to paraphrase or whatever. So, I mean, Eugene, being Romanian, had absolutely no trouble with the language of playing in 2s and 3s. I mean, additive rhythm is what he grew up with. And he superimposed the theme over top when it went into the paso doble at the end.